Hello everyone, welcome to The Green Man. Hope you're all good and well. So for this Friday's album review, I'm reviewing the latest release from Darkthrone and their album Astral Fortress, which came out today via Peaceville Records. And the album is 7 tracks and it's 40 minutes in length. In Darkthrone, we've got Fenriz on drums, guitars, bass, keyboards and vocals, and then Nocturno Colto on vocals, guitars, bass, and also production. So you might remember last year I reviewed Eternal Hails. It also appears at number 20 in my countdown of my top 20 albums of last year for 2021. And I quite enjoyed that album. I'm not sure now I look back on it, I've certainly not been back to it a huge amount. I did enjoy quite the old school sound of that, and that it was also pretty atmospheric. But I have to say, I think the album I maybe slightly prefer is the one that came before that, of their recent outputs, which is Old Star. And I really liked the thickness and the meat on the riffs of that album, and I slightly prefer, I think, Old Star even to Eternal Hails from last year, despite my positive review and everything as regards Eternal Hails. But yeah, this Astral Fortress album, it's sort of continuing the vein. It's still drawing somewhat on some of their classic sounds. They're almost sort of now, they're very doom metal in a way these days, with the sort of black and doom metal sort of style, I think, that they have at the moment. And this album certainly continues, I think, somewhat in the vein of their previous album, Eternal Hails. You'll probably, if you know Darkthrone, the chances are maybe you know them more for their earlier albums, which were their sort of, regarded as their classics, like Panzerfaust, Transylvanian Hunger, those sort of 90s outputs. And, I'm vaguely familiar with those albums, but, I've actually only really been getting into Darkthrone in relatively recent times, so I'm not familiar with their entire catalogue. But what I can say about this album is I think it's pretty good on the whole. And actually, where anything a bit like with Eternal Hails, but perhaps more so with this album, I feel it's a little bit lacking in, it's a little bit thin, it's a little bit lifeless at times, despite its intentional doomy, kind of gloomy feel. I just found this album at times, particularly in the middle sort of section, there's one song in particular I'll come to when I talk about the tracks, just felt it had a job kind of keeping me engaged, and that it was just a bit too, struggling to find some dynamics that would keep me listening, even though it's one of the sort of slower tempo styles that they use, for sure, in much of the album. So let's go into the tracks a bit more. Caravan of Broken Ghosts actually is one of my favourite tracks on the album, the opening track, strong opener. Like how they switched from the kind of sludgy riffs that they did to more fast tempo, even speed metal influenced riffs in this song. And I thought this was actually, this got me pretty stoked for the album as a whole. Impeccable Caverns of Satan was quite good. Again, they're sort of just doing some different styles of guitarists to keep you sort of interested in that song. Stalagmite Necklace, I really liked the synth moments, I think, that they brought into this particular song, and that was actually one of the songs I found quite compelling on my first listen, and I kind of enjoy that one. I think I might go back to that one a bit more. The Sea Beneath the Seas of the Sea is a track I really struggled with, and considering its 10-minute length, that did affect my enjoyment of the whole album. For me, I just felt this was just not bringing much to the album, and it was just a long track. Almost felt at times like it was just long for the sake of being long. That was probably deliberate, I'm sure, but for me, it therefore lost me a bit for the album, which had got off to a reasonably strong start. I really liked Eon 2, which was the album closer, where I thought this had the best, the most kind of, interesting guitar riffs. It felt like one of the more engaging tracks. I felt they could have done with maybe a bit more of this sort of track on this particular album as well. Given the way the album starts as well, I thought, there could have been a little bit more of that on here personally. So yeah, despite the intentionally moody and slow vibe of this album at times, and its dark feel, I felt that it was just a little bit thin and lifeless, as I say. Could have done with a bit more power behind it. But I still think the album as a whole is pretty good. It kind of just has that sort of slump in the middle of it for me that does pull it down a bit. But I still say it's a pretty good album. If you're a Darkthrone fan, particularly, I think if you liked Eternal Hails, I still think you'll probably quite enjoy this. I don't think that I have a kind of a big issue with it or anything, but it's probably one of those albums I can put on and quite like, but not one I'm likely to be going and revisiting a lot. You know, given a lot of the other albums I think they've been this year, this is probably not one I'm likely to revisit much. But saying that, as I say, still think it's pretty good. I'm still going to give this a 7 out of 10 as my final score for this review. So do let me know how you rate this one. Did you really like this one? How do you think it stacks up against the Darkthrone catalogue as a whole? Do let me know in the comments. Otherwise, just a quick, I guess, just to let you all know about what I've got planned coming up very soon on the channel. So on Sunday, we've got Dark Horse Discs coming back for another episode to talk about Iron Maiden's A Matter of Life and Death. A collaboration once again with JC Rock and Metal Reviews and Children on a Couch Reviews. Hope you join me for the premiere, 8 PM this Sunday UK time, obviously. And on Monday, a video I've been looking forward to doing, which is my next kind of batch of films, horror films I've been watching, and they'll be put into a tier list. We've got some pretty recent horror films, some very recent horror films in that list. So if you're a horror fan, you want an idea of what sort of good, if any, you've been following horror recently, you want to know my take on the latest in the horror scene, join me there for that on Halloween, Monday night, probably 8 PM UK time once again. Otherwise from me, take care all, till next time, bye for now.